Hey kids, I guess I'm in the same shirt, but it is a different day. Chapter 9, Chicago. Help a brother blow up his donut? Roy held out the inflatable seat cushion, shaped like a small inner tube. The hospital said he'd need to sit on it to avoid ripping his stitches. No problem. Thanks for letting us stay here. I didn't want to go back to my place. Tom figured his apartment was bugged, and probably being watched as well. Roy's place was clean. They had swept it with the foxhound earlier. Mi casa is your casa. The real saying is mi casa es su casa. Just don't let him touch anything. Roy stared at Bert and pointed. Don't touch a damn thing. One thing out of place and I'd break your face. Bert folded his arms. Why are you mad at me? I wasn't the one who told you to jump out the window ass first. Both you and your damn fishing plugs are going out my window in about 10 seconds. Maybe I should stay in a hotel. Bert, please. It would be safer if we stuck together. I know when I'm not wanted. You're wanted. Roy, tell him. Don't want him using my jaw neither. Tom walked his partner into the bedroom. Roy flopped onto the bed, face first. Tom debated helping him take off his pants, but decided to let them be. Leave the guy some dignity. Roy, I'm putting your pills here next to the bed. Thanks, Tom. You need anything, I'll be in the other room. Towels. You need towels? I don't want him using my towels neither. Tom turned off the light and quietly closed the door. Bert was in the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge. At least he has good taste in beer. Russian Imperial Stout. Need one? Yeah. Bert grabbed two and sat next to Tom at the breakfast bar. There was a carved wooden bottle opener in the shape of a naked African goddess on the table. Bert opened both beers and handed one to Tom. The cop sipped it. Sweet and malty, with a higher alcohol content than its English counterpart. Oh yeah, minoxidil. Bert took a swig from the bottle and looked around the apartment. There was a definite tribal theme here. Voodoo masks on the wall, a tiger print rug, a black leather couch with a leopard thrown on the back, a large rack of LPs, though practically antiques themselves, seemed too contemporary. Look, cut Roy a little slack. He's a good guy. He doesn't make friends too easily. That's surprising. He's such a warm and cuddly fellow. What's his story? Roy grew up in Cabrini Green, one of the worst housing projects in Chicago back then. Single mother, two younger brothers. Roy was the man of the house almost as soon as he could walk. But it was tough. He lost one brother to gangs and the other one to drugs. Took it real hard. I get it. He keeps people at a distance. Bert drank from his bottle. I had an older brother. Passed away when I was 5. He wasn't adopted. I think my father wishes it had been me instead of him that died. How about you? Brothers or sisters? Just me. Lonely growing up? Not really. That's 'cause you never knew what you were missing. Never having something is different than having something and losing it. Tom took another sip of stout and considered Bert's words. They made sense. He had dated Donna for 3 years, and had even considered asking her to marry him. When she left, Tom felt like she took a part of him with her, a part that still was vacant and hollow. He wondered if he'd ever be able to fill that emptiness again. Bert belched, interrupting his reverie. Tom lightly touched his scalp where the bullet had grazed him. 6 stitches. The doctor had wanted to shave off the hair around the wound so it could be bandaged, but Tom wouldn't allow it. It was bad enough looking like Quasimodo, shaving half his head without a question. He must have a goose egg on his head if he's thinking Quasimodo. Because I don't know if you remember in Notre Dame, the Disney cartoon with the monster with the lumpy head. That's Quasimodo. He glanced at the clock on the microwave. Almost 10 o'clock. After their trip to the hospital, it took 3 hours to debrief the Rosemont Police Department. RPD kept things cordial, considering they'd had their jurisdiction trampled on and hadn't been informed. Tom's own boss, Lieutenant Daniels, hadn't been as charitable. I wonder if this is the same boss as the other series of books by this author. He has an entire series called the Jack Daniels series, I think, and it's a female, and I think her name is Jacqueline. I don't know. She, okay, yeah. She chewed them out, promising a full investigation of the incident and demanding that the next time they follow proper protocol for operating out of their territory. Tom took another sip of beer and found the bottle empty. He grabbed two more from the fridge. Bert took his, nodding at thanks. You know, when we were back there getting shot at, I had one of those moments where my whole life flashed before my eyes. So I gathered. I've had a boring life. Not a bad one, just very mediocre. But since Jessup told me I'm Einstein, it's given me a new reason to live. I mean, I'm actually somebody now. You know what I mean? Not really. Don't you feel any different, knowing that you're Thomas Jefferson? Tom picked at the label on his beer with the thumbnail. I don't know how to feel. Suppose I am Jefferson. What does that mean exactly? I may have the same genes, but I'm not the same man. I didn't do all those great things that he did. I'm still Tom Mikowski, no matter what my face looks like, aren't I? I've been struggling with this one too. Here I've got Einstein's brain, Bert tapped his temple, the brain of the most brilliant man to ever walk the earth, and what am I doing? I buy and sell fishing lures. Tom opened their beers and took a long pull. You're just a salesman. I'm just a cop. Not quite living up to our genetic potential, are we? Is there such a thing? Does anyone truly live up to their potential? Here's a good question for you. Is greatness in a person born or made? Tom didn't have an answer. I think it's a combination. Bert scratched at the bandage on his chin. Some people are born with a fire inside them, the will to succeed. It isn't a learned behavior. It's just some unknown biological factor that just makes them try harder. Tom stared into Bert's eyes, Einstein's eyes. Do you think you have that fire in you? Bert took a moment before answering. Sometimes. Sometimes I really think I do. They finished the second beers. Bert went for the third, throwing out the empty six-pack container. Your friend's gonna be upset we drank all his beer. He'll be fine. He was drugged up and in pain. That's all. He hates me. He doesn't hate you. He won't let me use the toilet. You can use the toilet, Bert. It'll be fine. Bert opened the beers and set one before Tom. So what's the story with the lures? Tom gestured at the suitcases. Let me guess, your dad is a fisherman? Wrong. Physics professor. The lures are an investment. Look at it this way. Things like stock or gold or real estate. They fluctuate with the market, but they more or less go up steadily. But with collectibles like dolls or toys or fishing lures, the potential for profit. Hold on a second, Tom interrupted. This couldn't be a coincidence. Bert's dad was a physics teacher. Tom's dad was a politician. Jessup's dad was an inventor. That Tennessee cop, the clone of Robert E. Lee, you think his father was in the military? So? Bert didn't see the connection. My dad was in the army. Jessup mentioned his was too. Was yours? Tom's father had done a tour in Vietnam. He wondered if Bert had stumbled onto something. Was that how all the clones' parents were chosen? Dad had the same profession as the clone and had a link to the military. Tom stood up, thoughts racing. He needed to get online. Roy was the last of the technophobes. He didn't even own a calculator, let alone a computer. Tom went to the kitchen and checked drawers until he found a phone book. Are you okay? What are you doing? Ignoring Bert, Tom looked up the name of the popular all-night copying center and located the one nearest to Roy. As he had hoped, there was one only a few blocks away. I have to go out. Where? I have to track down a lead. Stay here. Get some rest. What if Roy gets up? If you're gone, he's going to throw me out the window. It's only the third floor. Try to go limp right before you hit the ground. Tom grabbed his jacket, gun, and Roy's keys and was out the door. The night had gotten cooler, freezing weather right around the corner. Tom stuck his hands in his pockets and hunched his shoulders, an act that caused pain flares in each of his injuries. Okay, sorry, need my oxygen. Okay, where were we? He walked down an alley that let him out on Addison and hung a left, heading east. Roy's neighborhood was a nice one. It was easy to spot Chicago's good sections. No graffiti, and the sidewalks weren't broken. Even at this hour and temperature, there were people out. Some high school kids clowning around with a tennis ball against a brick wall. 4 young women in short skirts on their way to one of the many clubs along the strip. 2 guys walking the opposite way, openly admiring the girls. An older couple huddling close because of love or warmth, or both. Tom moved at a good clip, going left on Clark, easily spotting the coffee shop between the submarine sandwich place and a liquor store. It was busy, as expected. Someone, somewhere, was always having a school or business emergency. Tom looked along the far wall and saw the computers available to rent by the hour. All were in use. He approached the counter and took out his badge. I need to use a computer. Tom looked along the far wall and saw the computers available to rent by the hour. All were in use. He approached the counter and took out his badge. I need to use the computer. The kid didn't even bother looking up at him. He was a 20-something slacker type with a pink streak in his black hair and a Sex Pistols pin on his blue uniform shirt. Sorry, all booked up for the night. Tom squinted at his name tag. Carl. This is a police emergency, Carl. Carl glanced up, giving Tom the once-over. You're a cop. Tom offered his badge as proof. Man, someone sure kicked your ass. You should see the other guy. They have to feed him through a tube. I bet. Hold on, let me see what's going on. He walked out from behind the counter and approached the computers. After a brief chat with the girl sitting in the third booth, he motioned Tom over. The girl who was booted gave Tom a dirty look as she left. He took her seat. It's my sister. She was here for free anyways. Knock yourself out. Tom got on the net and went to the CPD database, accessing Arthur Kilpatrick's rap sheet. His parents were dead. Fire marshal's report suspected arson. A few clicks revealed that Kilpatrick's father had also been in the Army. The same went for the cop in Tennessee. It was doubtful the Army would let him into their private database, but he wasn't going that route. All groups, no matter the size, were made up of people, and people have a tendency to stay in touch. Within a few keystrokes, Tom found a dozen websites whose sole purpose was to help a person find their old Army buddies. He hunkered down over the keyboard and cracked his knuckles, preparing himself for the task ahead. This might all be a waste of time, but it seemed like a way to go. So far, all roads led back to the Army. It stood to reason that Harold Harper, the doctor from Rush Presbyterian Hospital, who was responsible for faking Tom's birth certificate, might have also been in the Army. He began to search. The surname, Harper, was common. Tom found several Harolds on different sites, eliminating anyone who was too young to have been a doctor 30 years ago. Of those who did match, he clicked on their bios to get a background, looking for either medical training or a previous address in Chicago or New Mexico. After an hour of monotonous effort, he hit pay dirt. An Army surgeon, the right age, with a current address in Albuquerque. Tom checked his watch. New Mexico's an hour behind, right? It was late, but a doctor would be used to being awoken in the middle of the night. He took out his cell phone and dialed the number. After 5 rings, there was an answer. Yes, the voice was male, deep and groggy. Dr. Harold Harper? Yes. The same Harold Harper who worked at Rush Presbyterian in Chicago? Who is this? My name is Detective Tom Minkowski, Chicago Police Department. I'm calling. Wait a minute. Did you say Minkowski? Tom paused. This was the doctor who had forged the birth certificates. Who's to say he wasn't in on this entire murder plot? Detective Minkowski? Are you still there? I believe I know why you called. When did you find out? The doctor sounded eager, genuine. Good guy or bad guy? Ultimately, it didn't matter. There had been 2 attempts on Tom's life in 2 days. It wasn't as if talking to someone could make it any worse. I found out today. How did you trace me? The birth certificates. Yes. Wonderful. This is wonderful. I haven't seen you since your graduation from the academy. That came out of left field. You were there? Of course. Since the funding dried up, I've tried to keep tabs on the Lucky 7. Not always successfully, I'm afraid. You were always my favorite. You're a detective now? Wonderful. So, when are you going to fulfill everyone's expectations and go into politics? Dr. Harper, Harold, call me Harold. You're getting ahead of me here. Yes. You must have so many questions. Do you know about the others? I've met Bert. He's the one who told me. Albert? Oh, splendid. Is he still a stock market wizard? He buys and sells fishing lures. There's one for the social scientist to ponder. Harold, you just mentioned the Lucky 7. I thought there were 10. There was a long pause. You know about them? By them, do you mean Jack the Ripper and Arthur Kilpatrick? Oh dear, they're still in jail, I hope. I wish. Both of them tried to kill me last night. Dr. Harold clicked his tongue several times. They know as well? Oh dear, this isn't good. I warned him about this. Is that really Jack the Ripper? Unfortunately, yes. And the other guy, Kilpatrick? Attila the Hun. Tom let out a breath. He felt a little better. It was a real ego blow to get beaten up by a short guy. But since the short guy was once the barbarian who conquered the world, it was a little easier to take. Harold, there's a lot to discuss here. Let's start at the beginning. Over the phone? Why don't you come out to the ranch? We could talk all you like. It would be lovely to finally talk to one of you after all of these years. Tom thought it over. It could be a trap, of course, and so much had happened in the last few days that leaving town now wasn't the wisest idea. But interrogating someone in person was infinitely preferable to over the phone. With cell phone rates the way they were, it might actually be cheaper to drive down there. Back in the day, you had to pay per minute on a cell phone. And if it was local, it was like 10 cents. If it was long distance, it was like 80 cents. So a long distance cell phone call, whether it was landline or cell phone, could cost a lot really fast. So that's what they're alluding to. We might be able to get there tomorrow if we can find a flight. Excellent. I can meet you at the airport in Albuquerque. Just tell me the time. I'll follow you. I've thought about this many times. One of you finally figuring it out. Once or twice I almost called you up and told you, but you would have thought I was crazy. Listen to me, an old man rambling on. I'll wait for your call tomorrow. Tom couldn't resist. It's true, isn't it? I'm really a clone of Thomas Jefferson. Yes, my boy, you are. I should know. I'm the one who did it. See you soon, Doctor. Tom ended the call. Several people around him were staring. Their expression left no doubt they had overheard the conversation. Carl was among the bemused. How much do I owe you? No charge, President Jefferson. His expression was so smarmy that Tom wanted to yank the pink streak out of his hair. Instead of resorting to violence, he glanced at the pay rate for computer time and fished out his wallet. He plunked down a 5. Is there anything else you need to purchase? Stationery? Pens? He smirked. Louisiana. Tom left the shop, not sticking around to hear Carl's laughter. Questions were about to be answered, and no one had a bigger stake in it than Tom did. If this happened today, nobody would have a freaking clue who President Jefferson is, let alone the fact that he purchased Louisiana, or was even on a dollar bill, or is it a quarter? See, even I don't know. Chapter 10, Los Angeles. You poor dear, this is horrible, simply horrible. Marty hugged Joan for what seemed like the 100th time. He was more devastated than she was, bless his heart. Short, bald, immaculately dressed Marty smelled of expensive aftershave, even though he had a chic 3-day beard. He was a genuine friend. I didn't mean to interrupt your date. Oh, hush! You should have called after it happened the first time. Justin wouldn't have minded at all. Right, Justin? Justin came over for a group hug. Of course not. I'm happy to be here for the two of you. Twice in one night? How horrible! Joan felt smothered from all the embracing going on. She gently freed herself from the care fest. I can get a place some room. I can get a room someplace if I'm intruding. Nonsense, Marty and Justin said it at the same time. I have to be going anyways. Justin gave Joan a peck on the cheek and another hug. I wish we could have met under better circumstances. Marty talks about you so much. I'm jealous. Joan offered a gracious smile and a thank you. Justin gave Marty a more personal goodbye and promised to call tomorrow to see how everything was going. He left with a big wave. How long you been keeping him a secret? Joan gave Marty a playful punch in the shoulder. 2 weeks. I've been dying to tell you, but I wanted the test results first. Marty wouldn't get serious with anyone who didn't have a current bill of good health. Signed and dated. Isn't he gorgeous? He's into interior design and he's my size. I just doubled my wardrobe. Congrats. But this isn't about me. Can I get you some coffee? Something stronger? I'm tired. I'd like to get some sleep. Busy day tomorrow. Got those contracts to sign. Oh, dear, I know you're joking. You can't go back to work after a shock like this. Well, I can't stay at your place forever peeking through the blinds. So brave. Marty brushed the bangs off her forehead. Would you like me to call the hospital again? See how Max is doing? I'm sure his condition hasn't changed since 20 minutes ago. You can't get more stable than stable. It's so heroic you came back to your place. Joan kept her thoughts to herself on that one. She felt bad for Max, but any affection she may have had for him disappeared when he deemed Carmichael was more important than she was. I'll get your room ready. Extra towels are in the bathroom closet if you want a shower. I think I'd like that drink, actually. Vodka, okay? It's imported super premium. It's supposedly filtered 5 times. Sounds great, Marty. Thanks. Be back in 2 shakes. Joan found her way to the couch and plopped down, displacing an unhappy Siamese cat. It arched its back and hissed before stalking off. Sounds just like Abby's cat, Sky, doesn't it? Maybe it's a Siamese thing. Right back at you. She noted the time on the entertainment stand. Marty was so meticulous he actually set his DVD clock. Coming up on 1 in the morning. It felt so much later. Joan kicked off her running shoes, the same pair she'd worn to the police station on her first trip. Curling her legs up under her, she found herself staring at the bottom of her left heel. Number 3. Her parents had never given her a straight answer about the tattoo. When she was younger, they told her things like, "You're the 3rd angel that came out of heaven," or "I love you" has 3 words, and "we wanted you to always remember that." Joan knew she was adopted from the moment she could talk. Her parents began their family late in life. Her father had been career Army and was always flitting from one part of the world to another. When he finally settled down, he and his wife were already in their late 40s. Losing them had been unbearable. Mom from heart disease, and Dad from a broken heart, missing Mom so much. Joan so much wanted to call them right now. Have them tell her it would all be okay. But would it be okay? The psycho who attacked her knew about the tattoo. It seemed somehow tied in with the reason he wanted to kill her. Someone wants me dead, Joan thought. She shivered. There was something going on here that was beyond her understanding, and she didn't know who to turn to for help. The police didn't even file a report for the second attack. Joan watched as the detective in charge tagged it at the end of the first one. Rather than offer to escort her home, they suggested she spend the night elsewhere. So much for protecting and serving. What would you prefer, hun? Cranberry or OJ? Marty appeared with a cocktail tray, complete with a small silver ice bucket and tongs. He was so cute, Marty. Just ice, thanks. Marty plunked some cubes into a rocks glass and poured her a healthy shot of vodka. Joan gulped it down like water. The burn made her stomach clench, but she held it down. Hit you again, miss? Please. After he filled her glass, she patted the cushion next to her, and Marty sat down. Is that the tattoo you were talking about? What is it? The golden arches? It's a 3. How mysterious. What does it mean? Joan took a small sip of vodka. I have no idea. I've had it since I was a baby. You know, I worked with a man who had a tattoo just like that. Not a 3, though. I think he was number 4. You're kidding. No. Same size, same blue color. We had a company party at the beach, and I noticed and I asked him about it. He didn't know where it came from either. Who was he? He wrote ad copy at that agency in Santa Monica that you lured me away from. Gosh, well, that was years ago. What was his name? Began with B. Bob, Brian, Buster, Bill Masterson. God, I'm so happy I'm out of the advertising bid. It's so cutthroat. She rolled her eyes. And the movie business isn't cutthroat? Of course it is, but at least we pretend to be nice to each other. Joan took another sip of vodka. Do you think he still works there? Why? Do you think he might be your long-lost brother or something? How's that for a movie of the week? 4 children, separated at birth, each with a number to identify them and an intrepid mother's search to track them down. I bet Lifetime would lap it up. What was the agency? Oh, Chalmers and Sloan. Kind of a eclectic client list. They do a lot of print stuff, not too much TV work. Joan finished the drink and mulled it over. Another person with a number tattoo. It could mean nothing, or it could mean a lot. She'd have to check the guy out. A yawn escaped her mouth, and the alcohol was taking the edge off her paranoia. Oh, dear, you're exhausted. Let's get you to bed. Silently, Joan followed him down the hall into the guest bedroom. Marty had turned down the blankets and left a large white T-shirt on the pillow. There's a new toothbrush on the sink, and I am one room over if you need anything. Thanks, Marty. She gave him one more hug. Good night. Sweet dreams, hon. She closed the door and undressed. The T-shirt had a Harley-Davidson logo on it and smelled like fabric softener. She put it on and slipped into the cool, inviting bed, too tired to take her makeup off. Sleep came fast and hard. Joan jolted herself awake sometime the next morning. She had had a nightmare, a reoccurring one that went back to her childhood. In it, she was being chased by someone or something. She could never see its face. The closer it got, the harder it became to run. Her legs got heavy, and her feet stuck in the ground, and it seemed like she was moving in slow motion. Joan would try harder and harder to get away, but no matter how much she strained, the thing would always get her. That's when she woke up. That's when Sorry, I apparently cannot speak today. That was when she'd wake up, often gasping for air. This time it was worse than usual. When the thing caught her, it began to drag her to a large, pointed stake buried in the ground. Ass or crotch? She bolted upright in bed, her heart banging away, and tried to remember where she was. The sun was peeking through the blinds, and a clock radio she had never seen before told her it was a little past 8. Marty's place. Joan relaxed, leaning back and wiping the crust out of her eyes. She got out of the bed and padded over to the bathroom. The mirror confirmed her fears. She looked like hell. Her eyes were red and baggy, her face was drawn, her hair resembled a dead plant. Joan showered, brushed her teeth twice, found and used some Visine, and went back to the bedroom to change. Marty had already made the bed and laid her clothes out for her. There was also a big, foamy cup of cappuccino on the nightstand. She didn't want to put on the same outfit again. It reminded her of yesterday, but she didn't have a choice. When finished, she checked her reflection in a framed Nagel print. Still haggard, but once she put her makeup on, she might be able to fake being attractive. So he must have actually washed her laundry overnight. Joan took her coffee and met Marty in the kitchen. Good morning, sunshine. You look great. You're an excellent liar, Marty. Thank you. Were you up for breakfast? Croissant? Biscotti? Energy drink? The cappuccino's enough. If you want to change, I can drop by your place and pick something up. If you could take me there, that would be great. Are you sure you want to go back so soon? Got to go sometime. If we hurry, we can just make rush hour traffic. You're the boss. Marty owned a Corvette, which was a total waste because he drove like an old lady. Always under the speed limit, slowing down for stale green lights in case they turned yellow, taking forever to merge. It normally made Joan nuts, but almost being murdered gave a person more patience for the little things. Here we are. Marty pulled into her driveway and parked. You ready? Joan answered by getting out of the car and heading towards the front door. There were dark brown stains in the driveway. Blood. Max's blood. She pushed past it. Marty followed her in, eyes darting this way and that, obviously uncomfortable. I'll need the cleaning service to come by. Take care of this blood. I'd also like the bathroom cleaned and the jacuzzi drained. The phone needs to be fixed. I think the line was cut. And get some quotes on alarm systems. While you're at it, call up Stevenson Burglary and tell them their product stinks and I demand a refund. Also, tell them to kiss my ass. Marty grinned. There's the tiger I know and love. He took out a pocket tape recorder and repeated her instructions. Joan went into the bedroom and shed her outfit. She tossed it all in the garbage. A shame, but she'd never wear it again, with the memories attached. She stared momentarily at her wardrobe and went for her favorite power suit. A Claiborne red blazer with a wide shoulders and matching skirt. A white silk blouse and some red pumps rounded out the ensemble. After checking herself in the bedroom mirror, she switched from heels to flats. The pumps looked better, but you can't move fast in heels. Marty had drawn the blinds over the patio doors, his tan complexion somewhat pale. He must have seen her dog. Poor Schnapps. She'd been so consumed by her own safety she hadn't had time to mourn the death of her furry pal. She felt the tears well up, but refused to let them fall. Call someone to have those stakes removed? Should I arrange for services? Have him cremated. Pick out a nice urn. I didn't have him long, but he was a good dog. The tears fell anyways. Joan went to the bathroom and forced composure. It took a few minutes, but she managed to get her breathing under control. Then she did the 2-minute makeover. A little foundation, a touch of eyeliner and mascara, and some quick, subtle lipstick. Feeling much more like herself, she grabbed her extra set of keys and led Marty out of the house. I also want a new front door lock, something pick-proof if such a thing exists. Tell the locksmith I'm putting the keys in the mailbox. She did just that. Do you mind if I drive, Marty? Go ahead. I'd like to make some calls. Get started on this anyways. She put the vet through the paces, cornering fast, pushing 90 miles an hour on straightaways, weaving through traffic with a liberating sense of abandon. When they arrived at work, Joan felt good. She loved her office. Joan de Villiers Productions began its life sharing space with an insurance agent in East Compton. Now, 8 years and many movies later, she had a plush sixth-floor spread on the strip with a view and all the chrome and mirrors money could buy. Marcia, her secretary, greeted her with a stack of messages and the FedEx from Paramount. Joan spent the next hour poring over the contract, making little additions and deletions to various clauses, the horrors of the previous day lost in a stream of legalese. That done, she had Marcia free up her schedule for the afternoon and got to work on revising some script changes for the cruise film. Rather than her usual lunch at Brisby's, Joan ordered pizza and surprised herself by eating 4 slices. She was on her fifth when the intercom buzzed. "Joan? The LAPD is on line 2. Says it's urgent." "Thanks, Marcia." "Urgent? They caught the creep?" "This is Joan de Villiers." "You broke my nose, bitch. You think it's over? I'm gonna shove that steak so far up your—" Joan slammed down the receiver. When her hand stopped shaking, she called the police. Chapter 11. Albuquerque. "These ain't eggs." Bert poked at the airline food with his undersized plastic fork. "I think there's some kind of polymer. I shouldn't have paid extra for the meal." Tom didn't care. He devoured them anyways, along with the stale bun, the dry sausage, and 2 cups of bland coffee. He also polished off Roy's meal while his partner snored, zonked out from the painkillers. "So we're meeting with the doctor who created us?" Tom frowned at the terminology. He didn't like the idea of being created. But then, he wasn't exactly born either, or was he? The answers were less than an hour away. "He's picking us up at the airport." "I don't see why he had to come." Bert pointed his chin at Roy. He hadn't shaved, and it was tough to spot his stitches. "He's my partner. We watched each other's backs. You didn't have to come either. You could have stayed in Chicago. I have a right. I have questions too." "You didn't have to bring your lures." "They go where I go." Bert reached up and switched off the blowing nozzle. "Recirculated air. Ugh. I call these things germ cannons. You might as well be French kissing everyone on the plane." Tom wiped the pat of butter off the little white square of cardboard and onto his third bun. Bert stored his tray in the upright position and fished a magazine out of the pouch on the seat ahead of him. "Oh, boy, it's an issue of Macrame Monthly that I haven't read yet." The flight attendant collected their plates, but not before Tom forked the last sausage into his mouth. The cut inside his cheek had healed some, but the salty meat still stung. If indeed it was meat. It tasted more like a member of the rubber family. He didn't feel the wound on his head at all, and since his hair covered the stitches, it wasn't even noticeable. The thing that hurt like hell was his rib cage. Sleeping on Roy's soft leather couch had been a mistake. Every breath was like a fork in the chest. Tom glanced to his left over the lightly snoring Roy out the window. Clouds obscured his view. To his right, Bert was absorbed in the magazine. It was strange to look at him, a face so recognizable that it was practically an archetype. "So, Bert, since you found out about the Einstein thing, has there been any indication that you really are him?" Bert set the magazine down. "You mean, have I ever had any brilliant thoughts or ideas?" "Yeah." "Nope, not one." "Have you ever taken an IQ test? Like those Mensa puzzles? Figure out what number comes next in the series?" "Yeah, those." "No, never could get through them. I got slightly above average on my SAT, though, after my third try." Tom noticed several strands of gray in Bert's wavy hair. In 10 or 20 years it would become the great white mop known the world over. "How about you, Tom? Do you feel any difference since finding out?" Tom was about to answer no, but he realized that wasn't the case. Though he still felt like himself, he was experiencing something akin to performance anxiety. He had been struggling with it since last night, after Harold had asked him when he was going to go into politics. There was a whole big world out there. Shouldn't he be doing something more than just police work? Tom had always thought he was a good cop, good at his job, but now it didn't seem like it was enough. I don't feel like a different person, but I think I do feel a little inadequate. That'll pass. Soon you'll feel completely worthless. Bert went back to his magazine. Tom opened the little nozzle over his head, bathing his face with the germ cannon's cool, still air. He smoothed out the wrinkles in the tan pants Roy had lent him. They were a little big at the waist, but otherwise fit fine. The lone shirt was another story. Tom was swimming in it, and since putting it on, he felt the urge to hit the gym and work on his pecs. Bert hummed as he read. Something vaguely familiar. When Tom realized it was Britney Spears, he shook his head. As far as nature versus nurture went, Bert was a damn fine argument for nurture. What's 55 and 26? Tom asked. Hell if I know. I thought you were a stock market wizard. Bert looked up at him. How did... That doctor told you, didn't he? He said he kept tabs on us. Bert shrugged. I did some trading. Made some fortunes. Lost some fortunes. That's behind me now. But you were good at it. Without dealing with numbers? I didn't deal in numbers. I dealt in shares and dollars. Same thing. Not for me. Okay, if I had $85,552 and I wanted to buy some shares of stock that sold at 2.25, how many shares could I buy? Bert didn't hesitate. You could buy 38,023 shares and have 11 cents left over. When the realization of what he had just said hit him, he broke into a wide grin. Hey, do another. Surprised, Tom continued. A guy wants to buy 351 shares of a stock that's at 6 7/8. He needs $2,413.12.5. Bert beamed. Wow, I'm pretty amazing. What's 18 times 45? Bert's smile faltered. I don't know. That doesn't make sense, Bert. I know it doesn't make sense, but I just don't know. Okay. What if I wanted to buy 45 shares of stock at $18 a share? $810. This is weird, Tom. How come I can do it if it's a stock question, but not when it's just simple multiplication? Tom recalled an old story he had heard about Albert Einstein. Do you care about multiplication? Hell no. Did you care about the stock market? I lived and breathed to trade. There's your answer. Maybe you're a genius at what you care about. Einstein failed math in school. He just had no interest in it. You think that's it? Could be. Bert scrunched up his face. Tom could see he was puzzling it out. So now all I need to do is force myself to care about quantum mechanics? Possible. But I don't care about quantum mechanics. It bores the crap out of me. Do you care about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? As much as the next guy, I don't dwell on it. How are your writing skills, essays and reports and things? Well, I won that Pulitzer a few years back. So, in other words, I probably have Einstein's intellect locked up in my head somewhere, but you got butt kissed from Jefferson? Bert delved into the magazine again, leaving Tom to dwell on that. The feeling was akin to being 10 feet tall, but still unable to dunk a basketball. As the plane emptied, Tom was reluctant to leave his seat. His self-esteem was at an all-time low, and being told he was conceived in a lab under a microscope couldn't possibly help. Are you guys coming? Bert already had his carry-on in hand, and his sunglasses perched on the end of his long nose. We here? Roy yawned and stretched. Did I miss breakfast? I wouldn't phrase it like that. Roy attempted to stand up, forcing his partner to move out of the way. Tom gripped the armrest and pried himself out of his chair. Don't forget your donut! Bert pointed to the inflatable ring on Roy's chair. The cop turned and picked it up, his face sour. They were the last ones out of the plane. Tom and Roy had been required to fly with their guns locked up in the cockpit per FTA rules. The moment Tom stepped onto the runway, he had to squint against the glare. He had never been to New Mexico before, but it was exactly like he anticipated. Hot, dry, sunny, with mountains in the distance. The authentic West. The trio walked to the terminal, which was minuscule by Chicago standards. A sign welcomed them to the ABQ Sunport, and the air conditioning embraced them like a close family when they entered. Tom asked for directions to the front entrance, receiving them in a pronounced drawl from the steward. He didn't have a cowboy hat to tip, but thanked the man just the same. The airport was quiet, serene, no large crowds or rushing people. It was unnatural. Perhaps there was some kind of sedative in the water? Hello! Dr. Harold Harper was stooped with age, tan the color of mahogany, it's a really dark brown, sporting faded jeans and a plaid shirt. He had a fringe of white hair encircling a bald dome speckled with liver spots. Tom knew his age to be 72, but the doctor rushed to greet them like someone half that age. Wonderful to see you. Let me look. He grasped Tom's shoulders and gave him a once-over. My, it's simply amazing. You could have just stepped off a $2 bill. Okay, I was right. He was on money. And Albert. Bert got similar treatment. The mustache and everything. Did you have the mustache before or grow it out once you found out? And who's this? This is Detective Roy Lewis, my partner. Hello, Roy. Nice to meet you. He shook Roy's hand. Actually, I suppose this is our first official meeting as well. He shook Bert's hand, and then Tom's. Harold Harper, welcome to New Mexico. Do you have suitcases? I do. Bert raised his hand. The luggage return is this way. So this is all written before 9/11, apparently, because there's no security check-ins, check-outs, other than the guns and the SF in the cockpit. But the roundabout with your luggage falling out, that's still the same. I don't remember when there weren't roundabouts, but I imagine they probably weren't worldwide, or at least not nationwide, but that's what I would see when I imagine this scene. The elderly man took off at a quick clip, pointing out which airlines occupied which terminals and where the restrooms and restaurants were, as if we were given a tour of the Louvre. That's the place in France where they have the kings and queens jewels. It's also where they kept the prisoners in the basement, I guess you'd call it. There's a canal that runs underneath it with all the big old metal gates that they'd raise and lower to put prisoners in and out. Anyways, famous place in France. Bert's bags were the first off the carousel, but he insisted on opening them and inspecting the contents before they could move ahead. How could anything get damaged in those things? Roy asked, referring to Bert's Samsonite suitcases. Bet they're heavy as hell. These are classics. I don't even know if they make them anymore with a hard shell like this. They're waterproof, shockproof, and smashproof. Remember the commercial with the gorilla jumping on them? I don't, but apparently it was a thing. Outdoors again, the heat was like a hair dryer. Harold had parked close to the building in a handicap spot. He had a wheelchair sticker hanging from his rear view, but Tom couldn't guess what his ailment might be. The man had more energy than a 2-year-old on crack. The good doctor drove an old Jeep Wrangler with no roof or doors, just a roll bar to protect them from the elements. It was what could charitably be called a 4-seater, though the rear two seemed to be built for embryos. Tom attempted to climb in back, but Harold stopped him. Please, do me the honor of sitting up front with me, if you would. Roy shot him a look that would fry burgers, but Tom sat up front anyways. Bert played around with a bungee cord for several minutes, strapping in his luggage to the rear rack, while Roy placed his carry-on between his feet and carefully positioned the donut. Harold took off before either had a chance to fully settle in. The doctor drove with the same sense of urgency he displayed while on foot. Traffic signals didn't appear to be applicable to him, and twice he had to swerve to avoid collisions. Tom liked him immediately. The ranch is about 10 miles out of Albuquerque. Used to be 20 miles out, but the town has grown pretty fast. It'll reach 750,000 within the next few years at the current rate. Tom noted that as America aged, it tended to homogenize. Albuquerque could have been a suburb of Chicago, complete with strip malls, supermarkets, chain stores, and apartment buildings. The only difference was that every other vehicle was a 4x4. Tom checked the rear view, paranoid about being tailed. Rather than black sedans, he saw Bert sock Roy in the shoulder. Bert grinned. "Slugbug green! No hitbacks!" "Why'd you just hit me, fool?" "Look like a bug, right there. Don't you play the Slugbug game? Every time you see a VW Beetle, you hit the guy next to you and say the color. You do that again, we play the physics game. I'd toss you out the speed of the Jeep and see how many times you'd bounce." Bert folded his arms, glaring. "What is your problem? Why can't you have fun?" "I have loads of fun." "You act like you have a saggy diaper that leaks. Maybe you need to take your shut the hell up pill." "I dare you to stop being a grump ass," Bert challenged. "Fine. Punch Bronco black." Roy slugged Bert in the shoulder. Bert's eyes got wide. "What the hell was that?" "I saw a black Ford Bronco, so I punched you." "That's not the game. It's Volkswagen bugs. Now who's the one who isn't having any fun?" Bert hit him back. "There. You didn't call no hitbacks." "Fine." Roy scanned for a car, then he smacked Bert in the back of the head. "Head whack Cadillac yellow. No hitbacks." Bert elbowed Roy in the ribs. "Rib jab Buick Allegra red. No hitbacks." "As soon as I see a Toyota, I'm going to break your jaw." Harold leaned over and spoke to Tom out of the side of his mouth. "Are they always like this?" "Neither of them plays well with others." Luckily for all involved, Harold pulled onto a dirt road, and they didn't see another vehicle until they reached the ranch. And a ranch it was. Tom, being Midwestern, assumed the term was used to describe any single-floor house, but Dr. Harper owned actual acres of fenced-in property, complete with grazing livestock. "What in the hell is that thing?" Roy pointed. "That's Emma. She's an Israeli black ostrich." Bert whacked him. "Israeli black ostrich, no hitbacks." Roy hit him back anyways. "You raise ostriches?" Tom regretted the stupid question as soon as it left his mouth. They passed a dozen more birds before coming to a stop at the house. "Largest of the rarities. Their meat is red, 80% leaner than beef. One egg is the same volume as 2 dozen chicken eggs. Shells and feathers fetch top dollar, and the leather is soft as lamb. Plus, they're a hoot to have around." One of the birds walked up to the truck and stared at Roy, its head only a foot away from him. Roy recoiled. "No need to be afraid," Harold said. "She just wants her head scratched." The bird's head bobbed up and down, seemingly in agreement. "I don't like it. Make her go away." Bert reached over and patted the ostrich. "See? Very docile animal. You could even ride some of the larger ones. Perhaps you'd like to try it later?" The bird cocked its head and chirped, then pecked Roy in the nose. "Docile my ass!" Roy took out his gun. The ostrich screamed, then turned its tail and ran off. "Oh, they hate guns." Harold got out of the Jeep. "We had some poachers here, like, years ago, killed 4 of the birds. Whenever they see a gun or hear a bang, they head for the barn." There were 2 structures on the property, the house and the stable. Both had a rough-hewn, rustic quality to their design, with unfinished log trim and cedar shingles. Bert unstrapped his luggage, and Harold led them into the larger of the 2 buildings. Tom frowned when he wasn't met with air conditioning. 2 fans spun lazily in the high vaulted ceiling, pushing around the heat. In keeping with the log cabin concept, various pine support beams made crisscross patterns throughout the great room. There was a large chandelier, made from several dozen antlers, hanging between the 2 fans, and a bearskin rug, complete with head, on the floor. "Welcome to the Harper Ranch. Anyone for coffee? Nothing beats the heat like a hot beverage." There were no takers. "I'll just be a minute." Old man, need the caffeine. Harold left for the kitchen, and Tom gave his partner a nod. Roy removed the foxhound from his pocket and turned it on. What is? Tom slapped a hand over Bert's mouth and put a finger to his lips. Roy worked the room, waving the foxhound's antenna this way and that. He was quick, but thorough. Clean. He put the bug detector away just as Harold came back. The doctor was holding an oversized mug of steaming coffee. He took a sip and set it next to the table. Set it on the table, sorry. Tom caught the aroma and had to admit it smelled pretty damn good. Fine, let's sit down, shall we? Plenty to discuss, that's for sure. Harold ushered them into onto two sofas. Tom sat and stared at the ceiling-high stone fireplace. Why the house needed it was beyond his reasoning. Harold took the floor before them. The easiest way to do this, I think, is to start from the beginning. 40 years ago, I was one of only a handful of scientists trying to attempt in vitro fertilization, fertilizing an egg outside of the womb. My team worked with gametes from mice, then cows, and finally with human sperm and ova. Harold paused to sip some coffee. The work was funded in secret, done privately. We did it in Mexico. Not that we were breaking any U.S. laws, per se, but pure science is always easier without regulation, and we had a doozy of a problem to solve. My first success took place right before we landed on the moon. This was almost 10 years before Louise Brown, the first official test tube baby, was born. Who was funding you? We'll get to that in a moment. But imagine, if you will, how excited we were that we had created a person in the lab. And yet, we couldn't publish. We couldn't go public. It was all very hush-hush. I found out why later. Our benefactor, it seems, was looking for more than reproductive technology. After proving that sexual reproduction was possible in vitro, he next wanted us to prove that asexual reproduction was possible in humans. Cloning? Sort of. Asexual reproduction is having offspring with only one parent. This usually results in an exact genetic copy. Many things reproduce this way: protozoan, fungi, seaweed, coral, insects, fish, lizards, even some birds, under artificial conditions. The word clone comes from Greek word for twig. Cut off a twig, plant it, grow a new tree. In theory, anyways. The doctor was pacing before them, gesturing with his hands. He was talking at a terrific clip, the words coming out so fast they ran together. Tom thought of a campaign bottle finally uncorked after decades in a cellar. It was hard work. How can you create life without a sperm and egg? We knew about chromosomes. Humans have 46, getting half from the mother and half from the father, but what if there is no father? Could we fool an egg into thinking it was a zygote, that it had been fertilized using only the chromosomes of one parent? Harold shook his head sadly. Setbacks. Years of setbacks. We were trying to implant a coroplast into a cytoplasm of a zygote, nuclear transfer, forcing a Marola or blysoclast without two haploids. I don't know what the hell you just said. Roy got off the sofa. He gave Tom a look of intent, patting the foxhound in the pocket. Off to check the rest of the place. Anyone want some water? Kitchen is through there. How about you two? Am I going too fast? Tom ventured a guess. You were scraping out fertilized eggs and adding your own genes. Exactly. But it didn't work. We couldn't get the inoculated egg and the donor cell to fuse. We tried the Sendai virus, electrofusion, nothing worked. Then, as a control, I tried it with a non-fertilized ova. It fused like a zygote into a zygote like magic. So, all you did was put a human cell in an empty egg and it grew? Bert seemed surprised. Well, my boy, you make 20 years of research sound simple. Actually, it was much more difficult than that. You had to actually put the donor cells in the gap zero phase by starving them. You see, cells go through phases. Doctor, Tom held up his hand. You might as well be speaking Martian. We believe you when we say it was hard work. Darn tootin'. We finally did it. Grew an embryo in agar and transplanted it into the uterus of a woman who successfully gave birth to a healthy baby, sorry. We did it many times, in fact. You can imagine how excited we were. But again, it had to be kept quiet. And again, it wasn't enough. Our next miracle was to bring dead cells back to life, which, of course, is impossible. It can't be impossible. Bert leaned back and crossed his legs, because here we are. Oh, but it is impossible. Once tissue is dead, it's dead. Frankenstein's monster will forever remain in the realm of fiction. My team did enough work on that to settle that debate forever. So, how... Are you sure no one would like some coffee? You can't imagine how wonderful it is to tell this after so long. I don't even have access to my notes. There won't be any memoirs, any posthumous Nobel Prize. He took everything. Who did? We'll get to that in a moment. Anywho, once we proved that regenerating dead tissue is impossible, we did the next best thing. We copied it. Tom raised an eyebrow. You cloned it. No, you can't clone dead tissue. The cell has to be alive in the dormant G0 phase before we can take out the DNA. In a dead cell, the DNA won't replicate. It's a shell, a corpse. But since all DNA is simply building blocks made up of protein, all we had to do is reconstruct a dead person's genetic code. Rebuild it out of raw material, so to speak, in the exact same way as the original. Roy came back with a glass of water. He shook his head at Tom and sat down carefully on his donut. Tom puzzled over Harold's latest words, but couldn't get them to ring true. Even with today's technology, it was impossible to build a strand of DNA from the ground up. There was just no way. Doctor, I'm afraid you've lost me. Bert shrugged. I got lost right after he mentioned the twigs. Tom continued. Maybe I can believe you doing all these reproductive experiments years ahead of the scientific community, and I can even believe that you cloned a person from a live cell, but human DNA wasn't even mapped until a few years ago, and that took a decade, using the biggest supercomputers. I read the article in Time. Even then, it was only mapped. That's just a general picture. To get an exact replica, it needs to be sequenced, and that's still a long ways off. You're right. We didn't have the technology back then to sequence the entire human genome, let alone the genomes of the 10 people that we cloned. There are over 50,000 genes in a human being, made up of billions of base pairs. We never could have sorted them all out and put them in the right order. Tom leaned forward, arms on his knees. So how did you do it? Harold's face lit up. We took a picture. A very special picture, and from the picture we made a living cell. Please explain. In 1953, Watson and Crick used X-ray crystallography to discover the structure of a DNA molecule. They bounced radiation off of DNA and formed an image on photographic film, coming up with the double helix configuration. How much do you know about DNA? Tom thought back to high school biology, over 12 years ago. It's made up of 4 bases. They match up with each other in special orders. When the DNA replicates, it unzips, and then free-floating proteins match up at each side of the zipper and makes a carbon copy. Excellent. The 4 nucleotide bases are adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. When they stack up in specific combinations, they make genes, sections of DNA that code for protein. Genes make up chromosomes, and chromosomes make up that double spiral staircase that we call DNA. I remember this, Roy nodded. The bases are A, T, C, and G. G always teams with C, and A always teams with T. Exactly. Was what made it work. We fooled the DNA into copying itself. You lost me again. Never even had me, Bert frowned. I've been counting the antlers in that lamp. This skunk thought it was real and tried to mate. This comparison temporarily stymied the doctor. Well, I guess, sort of. The base pairs lined up to the negative as if it was real. When we finished, we had a batch of fresh DNA. We inserted this into an enucleated liver cell, cultured them, put them in gap 0, then removed the nucleus again and transferred it to an egg. From the egg, it went to the mother, and 9 months later, ta-da, clones. And the twig? Get off the twig, Bert. Tom turned to Harold. So, I'm not an actual clone of Jefferson. I'm more like a copy? Genetically, you're identical. You have the exact DNA match. But your body was never part of his, no. In fact, there are quite a few subtle differences. For example, the enucleated liver cells that we cultured your DNA in, they were mine. They were just empty shells, but still my genetic material. The same with the donor eggs from the mother. Again, they were scraped out, but the cell membrane was still from another human being. So I'm part Einstein, part you, and part Mexican woman? Harold shook his head. No, Bert, you're all Einstein. This brought a snort from Roy. But I wasn't grown from Einstein? Exactly. Who else was cloned? I did 10 of you, all born within a few days of each other. The first was Abraham Lincoln, then Robert E. Lee, Joan of Arc, William Shakespeare, Thomas Jefferson, Albert Einstein, and Thomas Edison. Those are the lucky 7. Why these 7? Philip thought they represented the greatest figures in history. He believed they would have the greatest potential to benefit mankind, or, more specifically, the U.S. government. Philip? We'll get to him shortly. Wasn't Joan of Arc burned at the stake? The one place in the body that DNA never seems to dissipate, even after thousands of years, is in the teeth. From what I understand, Philip had located her scorched jawbone. I need my oxygen. Secreted away from the pyre by a zealot and locked up in some French monastery for years. You said there was 10. Ah, yes, the others. Keep in mind, this was more than just a scientific breakthrough. It was a behavioral experiment as well. Just because we made a copy of Lincoln didn't mean he'd actually grow up to be Lincoln, with all of the traits that we imbue Lincoln with. What makes a person who they are is much more complicated than the genetics. There are many factors: parents, environment, chance, socioeconomic conditions, illnesses, accidents, influences that we could only imagine. But we didn't know that back then. And every good experiment needs some control subjects. So you chose Jack the Ripper and Attila the Hun? Jack was my fault. I'd always been a Ripperphile and considered Jack was my fault. I had always been a Ripperphile and was convinced the killer was that fish porter, Joseph Barnett. So we got a DNA sample and cloned him. I believe I was proven right. At age 11, he stabbed his adoptive parents to death. Rory returned Tom's told-you-so look with a blank stare. Harold went on. Philip chose the other 2, ancient leaders known for their cruelty, Attila and Vlad. Vlad Tepes Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, ruled Wallachia in the 15th century, tortured over 100,000 people to death. He would spear them on long stakes. Horrible man. His clone seemed to inherit the same sadistic streak. Set the family dog on fire when he was only 6. Explain to us again why you would clone the biggest psychos in world history and think this was a good idea? The logic was sound at the time. If personality was inherited, then the lucky 7 would grow up to be brilliant, and the unholy 3 would grow up as monsters. Of course, we only got it half right. The monster half, Tom frowned. Not to say that you didn't turn out fine, Harold quickly added. We've watched you for years. That none of you rose to the greatness of your parental genotypes doesn't mean our experiment failed, but ultimately our major successes are with them. Perhaps the will to destroy is more easily transferable than the will to create. Monsters, all three of them. So this was just one big social experiment? Bert sounded disappointed. We weren't created to control the world or anything. Philip had planned to reveal you to the world at some point, but after watching you progress, there just didn't seem to be any reason. Robert didn't become a great general. Neither Abe nor Tom have attempted to hold office. Bert, neither you nor the clone of Edison have made any grand discoveries or inventions. It was decided to never tell you, but yet you figured it out. How could you have been at Presbyterian in Chicago if we were all born in Mexico? I was a member of the staff, but I have never actually been to the place. Philip set it up through his connections. It allowed us to fake all the birth certificates, make you U.S. citizens. Philip found suitable parents through his army connections. The idea was to match the newborns up with fathers who were comparable to the clone. You keep bringing up this Philip as the guy who set this whole thing up. Tom stared hard at the doctor. Are you ready to tell us who he is? He was, still is, one of the most powerful men in the world. Philip Stang. Philip Stang? The Philip Stang? Who's Philip Stang? Bert asked. A Democratic congressman from Illinois. His picture was all over the media last year when he became Speaker of the House. I remember now. Bert's face twisted in fear. When I met with Jessup a few days ago, he told me he was being followed. He told me it started the month before, right after talking to some politician. It was Philip Stang? I didn't get the name, but what if it was Stang? He's one of the richest, most powerful men in the world. What if he's the one that wants us dead? Tom winced. This wasn't a pleasant development. I think this is a case of overreacting. Harold had finished his coffee, but brought the empty cup to his lips just the same. I've known Philip Stang for years. Besides, you've got the wrong one. The Philip that started the project with me is retired. His son, same name, is Speaker. Fine lad, too. Now there's someone with political aspirations. It wasn't an intentional barb, but it stung just the same. Tom rose above it. We'll need some addresses. Anything you have on any of the clones, they have to be warned. Of course, but you have to be careful. You both seem to have adjusted well to the truth about your births, but it could be potentially traumatic for the psyche to suddenly find out that you're someone else. No kidding, Tom thought. Would also like to talk with the elder Philip Stang. Can you set that up? Yes. Haven't spoken to him in a while. Last I heard, his health was failing again. Chronic kidney problems. He's got a home in Illinois, by Springfield. How about the others? Not a problem. I know Abe is in Nebraska. He sells used cars, I believe. Joan went to Hollywood and is a hot-shot producer. I saw one of her movies a few years ago. Something loud with aliens in it. William is a writer. This thrilled us at first. He got great grades in college. Unfortunately, he wound up in advertising. I have their last names written down someplace, a few addresses. How about the other three? Oh, dear. No idea. They managed to disappear. Jack was involved in the CIA for a while. His specialty was wet work, I believe they call it. He killed people for Uncle Sam. Vlad, we named him Victor. He escaped from police custody after murdering some young women in a particularly horrible way. Fled to South America. I've heard rumors that he worked as a freelance interrogator for various governments. And Arthur, Attila, in and out of prisons his whole life. Probably killed his parents. No idea where he may be. Do you know how they found out about everything? The only thing I can think of is they must have been told. All three are above average intelligence, but I wouldn't say they had the savvy to dig up their past. Of course, that doesn't leave many people left. Even though I had a research team, none of my assistants knew exactly what we were doing. You were watched by various government employees while growing up, but they were never given details why. The only two people who knew everything about the experiment are myself and Phil, and even I didn't know everything. Did you Tell them? Tell them? My boy, if I saw any of them, I'd run away as fast as my little old legs could carry me. I'm going for my coffee. Anybody care to join me? They declined. Harold plodded off to the kitchen. It's gotta be Stang, Bert nodded smartly. There's no one else left. All the high-tech listening devices point to a government operation, Tom agreed. But what would the motive be? Why would he devote his entire life to this project and then want to wipe it out? Could Jack and Attila be working on their own? I hope so, because if Philip Stang is involved, I won't be needing my donut anymore. Why? Roy frowned. Because if we're being hunted by that cat, we can all kiss our asses goodbye.